Hello there, welcome back to the channel, and today we're discussing the night aliens. We don't have any other name for this species, but they were native to the Delta Quadrant, specifically to a region of space that Starfleet dubbed the Void. These aliens had resided in this region, according to their own testimony, for millions of years. They had likely evolved in this region of space, or at least had adapted to life within it. They were a technologically sophisticated, warp-capable humanoid civilization with dark, I'm going to say raisin-like skin, very wrinkly. They were extremely photosensitive to the point where even mild lighting to a human or another species was too bright for them. And although they possessed some advanced technology, there were limitations to it, which we will get to. Anatomically speaking, as I said, they were humanoid. Their anatomy was not so alien that they couldn't be treated at all by the ship's doctor aboard Voyager, but as I said, they were extremely photosensitive. As a result of this, much of their other technology reflected their biological evolution. They possessed transporter systems, warp capability, directed energy weapons, and shields. These were things their vessels were seen to utilize. Very unusually, their ships were of a vertical alignment rather than a horizontal plane, which is not completely unheard of. The Romulans had a warbird that was like this, but it is a little unusual, but that is possibly a result of their technological evolution in such a vacuum from other races. The Void was a very large region of space that thousands of these ships existed within. There was a spatial vortex, which is basically a wormhole that went into the region and then popped out again within Malon territory. It should also be pointed out that despite their technological level and ability in numbers to actually overwhelm the USS Voyager, they were tactically inferior to a Malon garbage scow. So do with that information what you want when they go asking Voyager for help. But anyway, their species, as I said, did possess transporter systems. Their vessels also traveled under cloak and were generally difficult to detect anyway. They also had the ability to generate a dampening field around the starship that would suppress most of the major systems, including the lighting. They would then board the ship and attempt to overwhelm the crew in one form or another. They did this believing that Voyager was actually working with the Malon, but when they realized that Voyager was not, they actually asked for assistance from Voyager because the Starfleet vessel was powerful, and they didn't know how to collapse the vortex to stop the Malon keep coming into the region. Voyager did. Their vessels were seen to use powerful directed energy weapons, but were not seen to fire any kind of torpedo. Now, hypothetically, I'm going to say they probably didn't use torpedoes or any kind of projectile weapon like that because of scarcity of resources. It was noted that there were no planetary systems at all within the Void. Now, I'm going to circle back to that in just a second, but this would mean they would have relatively limited resources unless they were willing to travel out of the Void or trade with people coming into it to get more resources. So the use of energy weapons rather than torpedoes makes a little bit of sense there, because energy weapons, of course, you can keep firing until the weapon wears out or runs out of power, but torpedoes, you can only fire them once. So it could be they simply lacked that capability to shut down the vortex because of this, and they couldn't take on the Malon because of this, but whatever. Now, circling back to my original, what I want to talk about this race. One was their inability to take on the Malon. If they're strong in numbers and they have thousands of ships, and the Malon was such a problem for them, because the Malon, of course, were dumping toxic waste in their space that was making them very sick and killing them, why not attack it with dozens, if not hundreds of ships? There was only one Malon vessel coming through the vortex that we know of, and maybe deploy some mines, put a few ships around the entrance to the vortex. There are all kinds of options this race simply didn't explore. Also, if they really don't have any colonies or any permanent bases within the Void is big and the Malon are lazy. They come out through the vortex and they dump all their toxic waste wherever's convenient nearby, return to the vortex and leave. They're not going to travel hundreds of light years into the Void to do it, so maybe just move away. I'm not saying that was a good option. They shouldn't have to do that. It's like saying someone's dumping toxic waste in your back garden, just don't go in your back garden. But there is an argument to be made that maybe they just move away from that area. There could be other reasons. There could be other races living in the Void. There could be other things in the Void that are stopping them going into those regions. But circling back again to my original point, where there are no systems in the Void. Fine, there's no stars that we know of. There are no rogue planets. There's no asteroids. There's no nothing. None of that. In fact, the Milky Way galaxy is filled with rogue planets. There are loads of them drifting between the stars. They're bloody everywhere. The idea that there's a hundreds of light years span of space with none of them in it is a little hard to believe. Yes, they're probably not habitable, but they'll be full of natural resources. Plus, these people were building their ships somehow back to their ships. Those vessels are the only ones we saw. Now, they're not big, and they have a lot of them. If these people are living on their ships, these vessels strike me as some kind of combat craft, not a ship that's got civilians living on it. So they're going to have generational vessels somewhere, or perhaps larger ships as well. Could they really not handle one Malon ship? I know the Malon were tactically superior and their technology was a lot more advanced, but come on. Even the Kazon in numbers were a threat to Voyager, and they were decades, if not 100 years or more behind Voyager. I'm just saying, they really couldn't. They couldn't deal with one ship. Just an opinion. I recently rewatched the episode, and it was kind of a gripe I was thinking about while watching it. I was like, really? You couldn't deal with this one ship? Maybe if even you get desperate enough, a few kamikaze runs. Not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying you're getting desperate enough. You're dying anyway. You can't find a few volunteers to do that. There's no way you've got to deal with this ship. You people have mastered interstellar travel, but you can't figure out how to collapse the wormhole. That Malon ship's not there all the time. It's got to go back home to get more toxic waste and come back and dump it. So it's gone for several weeks at a time, probably. You can study the wormhole in that time, figure it out, maybe do something. Anyway, the species were an interesting idea. The idea of a race that basically evolved in pitch black, although it can't be pitch black because they do still have eyes and they can tolerate some light. My theory is, my hypothesis is that they didn't naturally evolve in this region, or if they did, they evolved on a star system that was within this region that has since died. Probably the star went nova, collapsed into a black hole or whatever, and a neutron star maybe, something that doesn't generate a lot of light. And the race became nomadic, but instead of moving out of the void completely, they stayed in their old historical area of space. Despite being millions of years old, their technology doesn't reflect that, but that could be a circumstance of, necessity is the mother of all invention. They don't want to develop their technology because they don't need to. They've reached a comfortable level and they are fine. Or they've lost the ability to develop their technology, which maybe was why they couldn't figure out how to collapse the wormhole. There are all kinds of questions I have about this race, and none of them have answers. All the same, it was a fascinating idea of a species. They're an interesting concept and a culture I'd like to revisit. It's interesting to see how exactly do they survive in this region. Where are they getting their power sources from? It's definitely not solar power, is it? Where are they getting the deuterium for their ships if they're using matter-antimatter reactors? If they're not using matter-antimatter reactors, what are they using? What's powering their ships? They're clearly using cloaking devices that are very power intensive. They've got transporters that are power intensive, high-powered energy weapons that, yes, maybe they're not using those very often unless they're fighting each other, but there's a lot of questions. But as I don't have answers to those questions, and any answers I give will be more speculation, like the idea about rogue planets or trade or whatever, I'm going to bring this video to an end. Let me know your thoughts on this species and how exactly they were. How do you think they were surviving in such a resource scarce area of space? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you made it out in this video, thank you for watching, and bye-bye.